I know people say try a bunch of things, stick, read everything Evan says, do this, do that, and try everything. But when you don't know what you want, you're like, meh, this seems boring, or this isn't stimulating enough, or this isn't. So I feel like I'm driven by like fun, kind of extraordinary experiences, whether like moving to Bollywood and being in the movies, or I'm like, oh, that sounds fun and it sounds hard, so I'm gonna go do it. But sometimes my brain just feels like I could do it, and that's it.
I'm Mark Drager, and as an entrepreneur and strategist, I've built a multi-million-dollar marketing agency. I've helped launch startups and transformed international brands. And yet, despite all the success, I still wake up every morning with the feeling that I'm just not good enough, and I've not come close to hitting my potential, and I may never achieve the high hopes that I have for myself. I believe that we all have something to prove, to the doubters, to the haters, to the voices in our own heads. And so each week, I share real, tactical advice and the most interesting and inspiring interviews, because my goal is to help those of us who have something to prove show the world and ourselves that we have what it takes to make it happen. Welcome to the We Do Hard Things podcast.
For anyone who's struggling to step into the spotlight, to put themselves out there on social media or become a thought leader, today's guest gives a masterclass in the try and see what happens approach to life. An actress, a model, social media influencer, and Amazing Race Canada contestant, and a successful entrepreneur and businesswoman. And add to that, she also has a degree in molecular biology and genetics. Our guest has tried and done and succeeded at so many different things that it's not only impressive, it's just really darn cool. So I can't wait to share with you the conversation I had with a woman who really tried to push me. Actually, she pushed me so far outside of my comfort zone that I started to get a little anxiety on the podcast. Can't wait to share with you the conversation I had with Suki Atwal. The more that I come to know about you, the more of an enigma you are. Like, you've done a lot of things, and I'm can't quite figure out how to place you. How do you think of yourself?
I'm like, Jack, what's that quote? Jack of many trades, master at none. No, I'm kidding. Not self-deprecating. I would say, I'm a product of an immigrant family. My parents moved here when they were super young from India. And it was all about education. Like, everything was about education, because they believed that if you're educated, you'd be, have a better life for yourself. So I kind of grew up in that mentality. So I was supposed to be a doctor, a lawyer, or engineer, the whole story. But I'm the black sheep of the family. So I've kind of, I took that path. I went to school, I got my degree in genetics, worked at a cancer clinic, but I always wanted more. That's a great career path for many people, but I always wanted different. So I was always secretly like dabbling in other things. I applied for the Miss BC pageant secretly. I didn't tell anyone. I won it, went to Miss Canada, almost won that. And then just random different things, but I always snuck and did them so my parents wouldn't be like, what are you doing? So I'd say I kind of always want to go against the grain of my family. So I don't know, maybe I'm just a rebel.
And so if we just took like the highlight reel, right? So smart person, goes to university in some kind of crazy science thing, works science stuff, but then you're like, hey, I think I could be an attractive person who can be on stage. So obviously you're not a shy person in that regard. And then, you go on this TV show and you move to LA, and you do acting, and then you come home. When you say you like felt like something more, what was that for you?
I think, I've always thought of it this way. I know we have a finite amount of time here on planet Earth. I always remember that. I remember there's going to be an end, and I just want to experience the most. I know this sounds cliche, but I do want to experience the most. When I looked at certain people in my life, I was like, I don't want the cookie cutter life. I just want to experience all that I can. So if that means doing things. I mean, not that these things are out of the norm, but if it means doing things against the grain, then I'm going to just go for it. And honestly, I just believed in a lot of like cool random things that have happened in my life. I was just like, okay, I could do that. And I just went for it and did it. And it was almost like a what's next? What's next? Like that rush. It's like, what's next? What am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? And there was a series of like multiple things like that. So I think that just remembering that we're not going to be here forever, and why live a normal, if you want that, that's great. I mean, a lot of people, my sister, she's a financial planner in Toronto. My older brother's a lawyer, and they like the stability, and they couldn't move here and there and wherever. So, I mean, if you have to because of kids, that's fine. But I just wanted to experience the most that I could while I'm still able. And I never wanted to be 65 plus and being like, okay, now I get to go retire and do this. I'm like, I got to do this along my way. And fortunately, it worked out where I was able to make a living and make money doing what I did. And so it's got me so far to this place.
So you have this ability to say like, hey, I think I can do this. I want to do this. Do you find that you're doing things out of like a yearning, a desire, confidence, or is it like, I'm scared, I'm worried, but I'm going to just do it anyway? What, when you're thinking, I'm going to move to LA, I'm going to, like, gosh, even the thought of me doing an application for a TV show is very different than actually getting it and then actually having to do it. That would scare me.
I feel like, that's a really good question. I feel like with certain things, it's easier than others. And if you don't, like, for example, in regards to The Amazing Race, I think I was like a young teenager and I was like, one day I'm going to do this show with my brother. And he was 6 or 7 at the time, because the American show's been around for a while. So I remember applying to the American show and they're like, sorry, you have to be American. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like this is ridiculous. Like I even sent an email as a teenager to The Amazing Race because I thought I could win. I was just like, I would win this show. I actually thought I could win it. And so I was just really confident. So the year that it came to Canada, I was actually living in Malaysia because I had a business out in Southeast Asia. So I was living in Malaysia and I was like, I can't believe.
Another thing I didn't know about you. Okay, so you're living in Malaysia. Great.
So I was like, I can't believe I can't apply. So the next Christmas, I was home for the holidays and randomly an ad popped out. It literally was just on my computer and we were going to a dinner party and I was like, Jinder, we have to apply for The Amazing Race. And I'm not even kidding. I just got the phone and was like, come on. And he's trying to set up lighting. And I'm like, no, just come on. The audition's online. So if anyone wants to watch it. And I was like, we would be the best team because we're going to win. I just believed it. So I would say some things I don't know if it's like you have to generate it or create it, but some things, it's just easier to believe in them. And then other things, obviously, you have to work through the limiting beliefs, the paradigms, the doubt, but if you don't think about it and you act on instinct, as long as it's something good and nothing crazy, usually you put it out there and just let it be and it kind of works out.
It sounds to me that you are the type of person where you put yourself in those situations where you're like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put myself on stage. I want to be on The Apprentice because I think I can win this thing at a very young age. So it sounds like a lot of the things that's driven you out of the feeling or the desire to be extraordinary or to be seen or to be someone or to have fun or to experience every single thing you could possibly experience, so you don't look back and go like, oh man, I missed out on that. What I mean, it seems like it comes naturally to you, but what would you say the main driver is? Is it for you like, I want to have all of the friends and try all of the foods and go to all of the places and do all of the things so I can feel like I lived a full life? Or is it like I anything but ordinary? Like, gosh, the last thing I want to do is live an ordinary life.
Yes, it's definitely not the first. So I don't get, I mean, friends are great. I mean, I love friends and places and all that kind of stuff, but I'm definitely not driven by that. I would say, I mean, I do want to live an extraordinary life. We don't get to do it again. We only get one chance. So I would say that it's the latter. Yeah, just wanting to have an extraordinary, but I do want it to be, I want it to be linked to something. Like, I don't want it. See, the thing with me is if I really want something genuinely, deeply, I do feel that most of the time I will get it. But then there's a flip side of that coin. When you don't know what you want, because, you know, you saw me on Evan's live chats and stuff. When you don't know what you want, I know people say try a bunch of things, stick, you know, read everything Evan says, do this, do that, and try everything. But when you don't know what you want, you're like, meh, this seems boring, or this isn't stimulating enough, or this isn't. So I feel like I'm driven by like fun, kind of extraordinary experiences, whether like moving to Bollywood and being in the movies, or I'm like, oh, that sounds fun and it sounds hard, so I'm gonna go do it. But sometimes my brain just feels like I could do it and that's it. But if I don't feel like I could do it, then I won't.
And so in trying all of these things, what are you looking for out of them?
Well, out of The Amazing Race, the $1 million, of course. I was like, we lost our clue. I don't know if you watched it, but the day before the finale, we couldn't find our clue. We realized my brother actually put it down somewhere, and it's an intense experience. So we lost our clue. So the day before we lost, but I mean, out of The Amazing Race, it was millions of dollars. I would say just like an elaborate experience. I just want a good experience. I do want to have a meaningful life where my life stood for something and I was able to impact other people. And that's where I am kind of right now. And even with like acting or moving to LA, I would say getting like a little bit of a higher platform, people do listen to you. So if you have I mean, we've been building orphanages and stuff in Mexico and Haiti for years, since like, I'd say like 15 years we started. And if you have a platform, and I always remembered when I was young, I was like, if I could just get people to listen to me, then I can have such a bigger impact. Because even with something as small as a race, when we got off of the race, I'd go into the mall, like especially as soon after it aired. Obviously it's fizzled out, but we'd go into the mall and people would be like, oh my gosh, you just made my day. And they're like, you just made my day, like, oh, or you're so down to earth and humble. And I was just like looking at the whole experience, and I'm like, because I was on this television box and these people saw me do crazy things, all of a sudden, I guess they're bonded and connected to the character, but all of a sudden people are just like, you know, more open, or you have the ability to make their day, or you have the ability to have a bigger impact. So I always saw that with especially these pinnacle things. Even when I won Miss BC, it was like, oh my gosh, like, you know, people took it more seriously, and I noticed that, and I was like, okay, I got to do big things. But coming to that, it does eventually, I mean, sometimes when I went to LA, I was like, oh, this is so shallow, you know, and I'm not going to name names that I work with or producers, but it's like some of the biggest that you can think of, even great people, nothing, you know, against them or anything. Actually, I love them all, but especially just in case they watch this, nothing against them, but it's just, I got to LA and I was like, is this what I really want to do with my life right now? And so that was the kind of questioning that I've been under and in, like recently, as of recently.
And that was the reason I wanted to talk to you, because, you know, the more that I only met you in the time of questioning, in the time maybe of, you know, should I be public or shouldn't I be public? What should I do? You know, this is what I think I want to do and all of this stuff. And I didn't see all of the, you know, the degrees and the travel and the orphanages and you know, all of the achievements along the way. And then when I learned about it, I thought, how can she have done so much? So many like things where you're putting yourself out there and yet be asking all of these basic questions. So how could you have done all of those things and put yourself out there and say, I want to do BC and, get on stage, and I want to do this and I want to do that. And yet at this point in your life, be asking yourself such basic questions. What happened?
So that's a very good question. And I noticed, in your podcast when you were talking about that, and I would say, I don't want to make noise for like just the fact of making noise. As in, I really, like I was saying, I want to know like exactly which way I want to go, or what, like, am I going to really go, back to LA and take this acting seriously? And so even with acting, I'm like, I'm bored doing this. Like, I don't, or not even.
That's the thing that so I'm an outsider and I go, okay, so you did The Amazing Race, YouTuber, Bollywood, Los Angeles. I wrote here, did makeup videos, got into fitness, did reaction videos on YouTube, because I went back through your streams of everything that you've had. Now you're doing the podcast, now you're focusing on, the Unfiltered podcast and building a Facebook community. And you've done all of these things and all these experiences. I am impressed with your ability to just be like, I want to do that. And then you do it and you're like, I'm bored with it. I want to do that. And then you do it and you're bored with it, or what have you. So are you just at the point where you're looking back and going, I've just tried so many different things, which is great. I have all these experiences, but what's the thing that's my thing?
So I'm not looking back and saying I've tried so many different things. I'm looking back and saying, holy crap, I can't believe I did all that stuff, especially when you have time to like sit back and reflect. So I'm thankful, for the courage to like move to a new country. Even like I wasn't born in India. I was born in Canada, but even moving to India or Thailand or Malaysia for my business for 5 years, going to Southeast Asia, I would say I'm a little bit more reserved now, as in the last, I'd say, year, where I'm actually like thinking about it and calculating, but before I would just be like, okay, I need to move here and try to launch this protein stuff in India and Thailand. There's a market. I need to get investors. Okay, how am I going to get it? Even if I didn't even know how I was going to get it, I just knew it would happen. So things would line up and I would go. But now I'm like, I just don't want to waste time.
But, I believe that fear and doubt keeps most of us standing still. And I know movement is always the answer, but, if you're thinking back, and it doesn't have to be any of the highlights, it doesn't have to be any of the things where you've been in the spotlight, but what's the hardest thing that you've really had to work through?
I would say, not looking completely at my whole life in the past, I would say, as of lately, like where I am in the present day, I would say mindset. Definitely mindset. I know it sounds crazy because I'm like, I'll just go and do anything, but mindset in the sense of now there's more limiting beliefs because of, and I don't want to blame external factors, but society, like, there's certain things like, oh, you should, when society kind of starts pressuring, like you should be like at this point, or you should do this, or you should be married, you should do, there's all these societal kind of pressures. And sometimes, like normally I've been very good because my parents had a certain way of thinking and I always had to kind of be strong and be like, no, like, especially to immigrant parents, again, like sometimes they don't understand or they have their own way. So they don't know what to do with the children in North America. Just keeping your mind free of those limiting beliefs and doubts. I would say that.
Do you, so with the whole, if I post a photo of myself, it gets all of this reach. If I post something I really care about, it doesn't. Mm-hmm. With being in the spotlight, with, being an actress, with being on TV, with all of this stuff, do you feel that society, social media, people overvalue your looks over what you can contribute?
I would like to think no.
How do you feel about it is where I'm going with it.
In life, I feel like I've struggled with that because that's why I secretly did. I went to school. I love science. I thought I wanted to be a doctor, worked in the clinic, and I would say I secretly did like the modeling and the beauty pageants and commercials and TV secretly, like for my parents and my friends. A lot of my friends didn't even know until they'd see me on a commercial or this or that on TV. And I secretly did it because I wanted people, because especially, I mean, I don't want to say in our community, but it was kind of like looked down on a little bit. Like, you don't model like you're smart. Not to say, I mean, models are making millions of dollars, but that was kind of just a stigma. Like, you don't do this stuff. This is for, arts are for people that aren't smart. And I love arts. Obviously, I'm in the arts right now, but that's just how we grew up. Like, you don't take art, you take science. So I feel like I always, like I had friends that were like, oh, use your beauty. Like you could, attract a certain group of people or whatever, but I just never felt that was just not me. I was like, I don't look at, the outside. I'm not trying to say I'm like beautiful. If anyone's not watching the video, pardon?
Stop hedging.
No, I'm not. They're going to look at the video and be like, what does this girl think she is?
Well, no, come on.
But I don't look at it like that.
You won a provincial beauty pageant. You said, and did very well on the national level. You can't deny that you're an attractive person.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, but I don't look at it like that.
Okay. And that's fine.
Yeah.
But
I don't look at it and say, oh, I'd rather use my brain and try to, make an impact in a different way.
I'm just curious, because so many of the things that you've accomplished, you've put a lot of time and effort and work into, and you obviously care about. I think people on the outside, the doubters, the haters, they'll look at it and say, oh, that's easy for her. It's easy for her because ... It's easy for her because she has an outgoing personality, or it's easy for her because because she's so beautiful or whatever. Oh, it's easy for her because of, all of these things. And what I'm trying to figure out is the parts that weren't that easy and what you learned from them.
I mean, one thing I did learn in kind of the whole endeavor that I've been on called life is that I don't really care what they're actually saying. Like if it's easy for her or not. Like maybe if it's like my sister or my mom would never say that, but maybe if it was someone really close, I would care. But I don't really care about that because even being on TV and stuff, you're going to get hate, you're going to get trolls, whatever. So as long as I always said, if my close group, like I'm really close with my siblings, like they know who I am. And if they're okay, if they're like, hey, call me out on something and they're not fine, then I'm, need to check myself. But other than that, I don't really care what other people say. But I will say, no, it's not easy. I mean, it hasn't been easy. Even just when I was just reflecting and thinking and being more self-aware, even just trying to stand up, even as a woman in this culture, where it's predominantly an Indian culture. I don't know if you know much, but, the boy, not in our family, but in traditionals, like the boys go out and work and the women take more traditional roles. Or, I even remember in our family as a kid, my mom's going to kill me if I say this, but she was like the boys never did dishes when we were kids. And I remember fighting for this, like equality, and being like, what the heck, just because he's a boy doesn't mean he doesn't do dishes. And so I would say there's been a lot of just, internal things like that where it had to stand, where I wish I didn't have to spend that energy. But even like moving to, India, I remember I was going to India and one of my aunt's sisters, she called me and she's like, you're going to India, just don't be yourself. Try to be more submissive and passive. Don't talk much. And I was like, I remember being so like, I couldn't believe she said this. And my parents were like, what, she said this? But just fighting these natural things that come in the culture. And I think a lot of times I did do bold, crazy things because I was like, I felt like I had to make a stand for women and kind of pave a way in a sense. I don't know if I've inspired anyone, but just kind of pave a way, even for myself and for the next generation of like, no, like this is not right and we have to break the mold. But Even, yeah, there's lots of different things. I mean, it's not always easy. I mean, everybody has a story that could break your heart, every single person. And we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. So I would say, I mean, I try not to judge people, honestly, based on knowing that we all have a story.
So,
Okay.
I'm someone who tends to overthink things. I'm someone who, tends to play out because I'm so future focused. I tend to play out all the possibilities that could be, and that's positive and negative. But as much as I loved The Amazing Race, and I was in high school still when that started. So we're going back to like maybe 2001. Maybe I don't know if we're around the same age or not, but I think you're younger. I think you're younger than I am. But I remember watching that show and thinking, oh, I could do that and it'd be so much fun. And then as I got older, I realized, man, the downtime, the constant anxiety, the having to like be off for like 6 hours and then be on for 3 hours straight and then just be sitting there waiting. Like so many things are out of your control. I realized I would not do well in those types of situations.
Sometimes it's 4 days straight. And then like one leg of the race, for example, they'll be like, go to the Tian Tian Buddha. And first of all, if you're in Vancouver and you have to go to the Tian Tian Buddha, that's in Hong Kong or Macau, I believe. So you're like, and there's no phones, no nothing. And if you ask a person, then it all has to be recorded and they have to sign a waiver that they can be on camera. So everything takes time. But sometimes like going to the Tian Tian Buddha is like 4 days to get to China, and you have to trek up a mountain and,
I get that, but it'd be like, quick, we need to get to the airport, right? Cab. And then you're sitting in the cab and you're like, and then you get there, you're like, quick, we got to get to the checkout counter. And then you run to the checkout counter and then you're like,
no, you're at the checkout counter like, okay, go to bed.
I know, but then it's like boarding will be off. Boarding will be in 3 hours. And then you're like, okay, that's how I imagine it would be. But listen, I am working at being braver. I am working. So, I think big, be bold and say yes, because I tend not, I think I'm on a different wavelength than most people in my life, but I'm still not thinking as big as I should be thinking. I'm certainly nowhere near being as bold as I would say you are. Like if I had to think about the think big, the be bold, and the say yes thing, I think you got the being bold and the saying yes thing down packed. So teach me, help me understand what would be your advice for me? How can I be more bold, because you seem bold as hell? And how can I just learn to say yes to things? Because again, I think you got check marks there.
So what are you afraid of? Like what is holding you?
That's a great question. What am I so afraid of? Mark, what are you so afraid of?
Wanted to do The Amazing Race. Is it the actual anxiety that's holding you back, or is it putting yourself out there that's holding you back?
Just saying, just teach me, help me understand.
No, I'm trying to understand
how to be bold like you and say yes like you do. Does it just come naturally to you? Do you just find yourself in those situations and suddenly you're, I don't know, on your way to Mexico for 2 days and you're like, hey, how did we get here?
There's that book, actually, I read it years ago, way before the race. It was actually the host of the American Phil. I don't remember his name. He's the host of the American.
He's like Dutch or something, isn't he?
Yeah. And he wrote a book, and I think it said Say Yes to Life or something, actually. And I remember reading that book because I was like, this guy's cool. I like him. I read it really young. But coming back to you, and you said, I don't believe that I could do it. Do you know that a belief is just a thought that you think over and over and over and over and over, and it gets ingrained into a belief? So the biggest way to do it is start changing it. Obviously, risk, as in you have to be risk adverse, as you can't financially go sell your house and put your kids on the, I don't know where, at your parents' house or
on the street or something.
Yeah, I don't want to say street, but you don't want to do that, risk adverse in that sense. But if you see the picture, say you see The Amazing Race, and maybe you can't do it with your business, maybe you can't systemize it, maybe you can't leave your family for 30 days. Or however long it is. So the main thing I would say, if you have an inkling for something, say if you see something and it seems out of the norm and it's too good for you, or they never pick, I would just do it. And like, even if you get to doing an application, just You know what I mean? I know it sounds so cliche, but it's like if there's some excitement in it, just do it. There's no there's no reason.
I like the advice. I like the advice. Just do it. Oh, come on. Wasn't that a great episode? Now, that was one of the first early ones that I recorded, so you can see a little bit of a difference, but Suki's story really makes me rethink what I'm doing with my time. Key takeaways for me. Number one, you must be driven by hard and extraordinary experiences. Number two, with a big platform, you can actually amplify really big things. And number three, if you see something that seems out of the norm or big for you, and it'll give you an extraordinary level of excitement, you just got to do it. Now, living in fear, listening to the haters, or the voice of doubt in your own head, it will keep you standing still. And standing still is death. So, shifting gears a little bit, I just want to remind you, please go over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review this. I'd like that a lot. If you're not subscribed to us, be sure to subscribe on YouTube. If you want to connect with me directly, reach out to me on IG, drop me a DM, and we can talk. Remember, those of us who have something to prove can show the world and ourselves that we have what it takes to make it happen. But you have to think big. You've got to be bold, and you must say yes. Why? Because we do hard things.